Hi listeners, thanks for tuning in. This video is about equity in assessment. Let's first go over some definitions. Equity is the absence of avoidable, unfair, or remediable differences among groups of people, whether those groups are defined socially, economically, demographically, geographically, or by other means of stratification. Assessment refers to the wide variety of methods or tools that educators use to evaluate, measure, and document the academic readiness, learning progress, skill acquisition, or educational needs of students. Research has indicated there is a problem. Research has found that assessment is inequitable. Equity, which again, according to that definition, is the absence of avoidable, unfair, or remediable differences. And equity is not being built into assessment practices. So let's go over some research that indicates that there is this problem. So this was a study investigated math achievement between English proficient students and English language learners. It also took into account socioeconomic statuses. The study found that SES had a significant impact on performance for all students, both ELL and non-ELL. High SES non-ELLs performed significantly better than high SES ELLs. There was no significant difference found between groups in low SES. According to the researchers, this might be because while non-ELLs are conversational, they may lack resources for reading. In conclusion, the researchers found that math assessment undermines treatment of ELLs. More research. This was another study. This study investigated whether the math SAT and other placement tests successfully predicted whether a student would do well in their first math course as a freshman in college. The researchers compared the predicted grades to actual grades. It found that women were underpredicted and men were overpredicted at a significant level for not only the SAT but other placement tests as well. The conclusion was that the mathematics placement system predicts grades differently by gender, thus there's gender bias. This could affect not only math placement, but admissions and scholarships too. Thus, it's important to pay attention to. Some more research. This was a report by Fincham and Cumming, and they summarized lots of different research. So, some of the reports that they talked about, research has found that girls perform better on many formative assessments, especially ones that have a social context rather than abstract. So they perform better on formative assessments rather than a summative assessment, particularly in physics. More research. Research has found that girls perform equally to boys in laboratory report writing in physics, chemistry, and biology. Research has found that students perform better on oral assessments versus written ones in science, especially among classrooms with multiple cultures, because written assessments were often misinterpreted. Differences in assessment performance is not due to race, but research has found that differences are due to lack of resources in home and school, the quality of teachers, and familiarity with language and cultural experience. For students with disabilities, accommodations to the test are often granted. However, research suggests that creating alternative modes of assessment, not accommodated assessments, may be more equitable. And one-size-fits-all assessments are not culturally appropriate, nor are they equitable. So, as you can see, there's a lot of work to be done, and this was a really great quote that I wanted to highlight. Assessment, if not done with equity in mind, privileges and validates certain types of learning and evidence of learning over others, can hinder the validation of multiple means of demonstration, and can reinforce within students the false notion that they do not belong in higher education. And here we have students on the ivory tower, so we don't want it to be like that. So some ideas to consider about how to have equity in your assessment practices. Are instructions clear and concise, or are you asking for too much in one section? Consider asking a diverse group of students if the instructions that you've created make sense. This is an example of instructions that are very confusing. So for example, for this essay, read each of the 2 paragraphs that follow and provide the requested information. Topic, write out the topic for each paragraph. Main idea, write out the entire stated main idea, or if the main idea is unstated, create your own main idea on the blank line. Major details, write out the keywords that tell the major supporting details in each paragraph. So these instructions could definitely be rewritten to be more clear and concise. Use language that is appropriate for all students. Some words are only found in the English language, such as serendipity, cheesy, spam, trade-off, and hillbilly. Topics could be unfamiliar, even generationally. So, for example, assigning students to compare and contrast their childhood with the Brady Bunch TV show. These are all issues that you want to avoid. Are there any microaggressions? For example, assigning heteronormative assignments, such as a qualitative research project that requires students to interview another student about their first romantic love with the opposite sex. Or hosting debates in class that place students from groups who may represent the minority opinion in class in a difficult situation. Be mindful of your own assumptions. Are cultural assumptions embedded in your assignments? For example, assigning projects that ignore differences in SES and inadvertently penalize students with fewer financial resources. For example, like a required trip to a museum. So these are all things that you want to avoid in your assessment practices. So some things that you'll want to consider as well. Be attentive to how students may understand questions, tasks, and assignments differently. Cater to students' unique learning interests. Use scenarios and examples that are relatable to various student groups. Playing into different cultures allows students from within that culture the opportunity to honor their prior knowledge and experience. So, for example, do not just have students engage in required reading where the protagonists are always white. Also, employ real-world authentic assessment. Allow assessment to reflect on life experiences, thereby making them practical. Also, consider allowing assessment outside of the classroom and have it applicable to students who wish to apply their school to their work and vice versa, because a lot of students work and go to school, so the assessment can be applicable to both. More ideas to consider. Consider a capstone portfolio project which brings a culmination of student work to the table. Consider including students in the department when faculty are writing SLOs and designing assessment plans. Interpret assessment data disaggregated by groups, race, ethnicity, gender, first generation, etc. And then this is really big. Be mindful of different learners and consider multiple assessment methods to demonstrate learning. You can use the same evaluation procedure, rubrics, but allow different assignments measuring the same SLO. Research has shown that this leads to more equitable results when students can choose how they want to demonstrate their learning. And this is a great quote. Students who experience validation from faculty and integrate academically and socially are more likely to persist and be successful in higher education. And this is a great visual of this idea of inclusive assessment. So it's been said that diversity is being invited to the party and that inclusion is being asked to dance. However, inclusion should also be asking, what song do you want to hear? Surely not everyone at the party wants to listen to Led Zeppelin, thus let them choose too. So let them choose how they will demonstrate their learning. Again, you can use the same evaluation procedure, like a rubric, for example, but students can be able to demonstrate their learning in different ways. So here's them outside of higher education, segregated. Now they're in the classroom, but we want them to be inclusive, and we want them to be able to tell us how they want to demonstrate their learning as well. Again, we can use standardized evaluation procedures. So for everyone to look over the fence, the building blocks they may need will be different. So, if you think of these as different particular assessments, they're going to be different. So I'm sure that you've seen this picture before, but equity is about giving everyone what they need to be successful. Equality is treating everyone the same. Equality aims to promote fairness, but it can only work if everyone starts from the same place and needs the same help. Equity appears unfair, but it actively moves everyone closer to success by leveling the playing field. So please consider that when you are designing your assessments. In conclusion, using assessment tools and approaches that work for the majority of students but are less mindful of students identifying within groups outside of the majority population places a significant portion of students at a disadvantage, leads to a decrease in the quality of education, creates a disconnect between students and the institution, and contributes to achievement gaps. So let's all work to not make this happen. Thank you.